The night everything changed was cold, rainy, and restless. Wind rushed down the narrow Italian street, pushing the rain sideways so it slapped against stone walls and flickered under streetlights.
Look at me.
Diana's scooter had given up halfway up the hill.
Saying comes from here.
She'd pushed it the rest of the way, her thin jacket already soaked through. When she finally stopped in front of the tall black gate of Matteo Ricci's villa, her arms ached and her stomach felt hollow, but she stood straight anyway. Inside the gate, warm yellow light glowed from the porch lamps. She could smell wet earth, pine trees, and something faintly sweet, maybe jasmine. She pressed the bell. "Chi è?" a deep voice asked through the speaker. "Pizza delivery," she answered, trying not to let her voice shake. A pause, then the electric buzz of the gate unlocking. Matteo opened the door himself. He was barefoot, wearing dark jeans and a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. His hair was slightly messy, like he'd just run a hand through it. He looked like every rich man she'd ever delivered to. Comfortable, handsome, and bored. "You're late," he said. "The rain," she murmured. "My scooter broke." He tilted his head, studying her. She looked small under the porch light, water dripping from her curls onto the marble floor. Her brown skin shone under the rain, and her eyes, dark and tired, met his without flinching. He gave a half smile that wasn't kind. "You know, most girls at least smile when they see me." "I'm not most girls." She said it quietly, without attitude, but it landed like a slap. He blinked, caught off guard. She handed him the pizza, collected the money, and turned to go. The sound of her wet shoes faded down the driveway. Matteo stood there longer than he meant to. Rain blew in, cold against his bare feet. He didn't close the door until she was gone. Diana didn't think about him again that night. She was too busy drying her uniform under a tiny heater in her shared apartment. The other girls were asleep. The room smelled like damp clothes and instant noodles. She rubbed her arms, whispering to herself the same lines she said every night. "You're safe now. You made it through another day." She had crossed the Mediterranean Sea 6 months earlier on a wooden boat packed with too many people and too little air. She still dreamed about the waves. Sometimes she woke gasping, convinced water filled her lungs. Back home in Benin City, her father was ill, her younger brothers still in school. She sent money every Monday, no matter how little she had left. She didn't come to Italy looking for romance. She came to survive. Matteo, meanwhile, couldn't shake the image of her face. He was 30 years old, heir to one of Naples' wealthiest families. He had never needed to work a real job. The Ricci hotels made money whether he lifted a finger or not. His days were full of noise, friends, fast cars, endless parties. But that night, the villa felt strangely quiet. He opened the pizza box, took one bite, then pushed it aside. His mind kept drifting back to her voice. That calm, simple defiance. "I'm not most girls." He laughed under his breath. Who does she think she is? But the laugh didn't last long. Something about the way she'd looked at him, like she'd seen straight through the arrogance, made his chest tighten. The next day, he ordered pizza again. When she arrived, her hair was dry this time, pulled back neatly. Same uniform, same polite distance. "Back again?" she asked. He leaned against the doorframe. "Maybe I'm hungry." "For pizza?" she asked flatly. He grinned. "Maybe for something else." She gave a tired sigh, handed him the box, took the cash, and turned away. He watched her leave again. Over the next week, he kept ordering, sometimes twice a day. Each time, she came, quiet and professional. No small talk, no reaction to his teasing. He started to look for her on purpose now. He waited near the window when the delivery time came. He told himself it was nothing, just curiosity. But deep down, he felt something else, something he didn't like admitting. Diana's rejection chipped at his pride. So he tried to get control back the only way he knew how, by trying to make her feel small. "You're just a pizza girl," he told her once with a smirk. "Why so serious all the time? You could have a better life if you'd stop pretending you're too proud." Her eyes didn't waver. Respect can't be bought. He opened his mouth to reply, but she was already walking away. That night, he couldn't sleep. He lay in his huge bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying her words. Respect can't be bought. He had money. He had power. But lying there, alone, he realized he had neither respect nor peace. The rain returned around midnight, tapping on the glass like a whisper. He closed his eyes, but all he saw was her walking away into the rain. He didn't know it yet, but something in him had begun to shift. He didn't answer. He stayed home, sitting alone in his huge kitchen, with his phone face down on the counter. The house was quiet. Too quiet. He could hear the hum of the fridge, the drip of the faucet, the distant sound of traffic from the hill. He kept seeing two images in his head. One, Diana, soaked in rain, saying, "I'm not most girls." Two, Diana, sitting on that crate, swallowing her pain in silence, saying, "You can't fix everything with money." He ran a hand over his face and let out a slow breath. "What are you doing to me?" he whispered to no one. Matteo started changing in small ways at first. Not because she asked him to. She never asked him to change. Diana wasn't that type. She never begged him for anything, never hinted for gifts, never tried to pull him closer. She didn't chase him. She didn't even trust him. The change was coming from inside him, and that almost scared him more. The next morning he woke up early. Not early for normal people, early for him. He showered, shaved, and instead of rolling over and wasting the day like usual, he drove to his father's office, the Ricci Group headquarters, a place he normally avoided unless he needed to sign something or charm someone. He walked in and people stared. Some staff whispered. His father's assistant actually blinked like she'd seen a ghost. "Is your father in?" he asked. She nodded, confused. His father, Pietro Ricci, sat behind a wall of glass overlooking the bay. Power sat on him like a custom suit. He didn't look surprised to see his son. He looked suspicious. "To what do I owe this miracle?" Pietro asked. Normally Matteo would joke, deflect, turn it into a show. That morning he didn't. "I want to start sitting in," he said simply. "On the meetings. I want to know how things run." Pietro leaned back. "Since when?" Matteo hesitated. He wasn't going to say, "Since I watched a Nigerian girl on a broken scooter carry more responsibility than I've carried in my entire life." He wasn't ready to say that out loud. Not yet. "Since now," he said. Pietro studied him for a long moment. "Fine," he said. "But if you're going to sit at the table, you act like a man. No phone, no attitude. You don't leave halfway." "I won't," Matteo said. He meant it. Diana noticed the difference too, even though she didn't say it. He stopped with the cheap lines. He stopped with the dirty little comments. He stopped trying to make her feel small every time she made him feel insecure. Instead, he started doing quiet things. When her scooter broke again, he didn't just throw money at her and walk away. He crouched down on the pavement in his nice clothes and actually helped fix it. His hands got black with oil. His shirt got stained. He didn't care. When she caught a fever and still tried to work, he showed up at her door, actually at her door, with soup, water, and medicine from the pharmacy. He didn't try to come in. He just handed the bag to her roommate with a simple message: tell her to rest. When a man on the street mocked Diana's accent, Matteo didn't start a fight and make a big show out of it. He stepped forward, stood between her and the guy, and said in a calm, low voice, "You will apologize to her now." The man backed down, quickly. He didn't do these things to impress her. He did them because he couldn't stand the idea of her facing everything alone. And that feeling, that instinct, was new for him. Dangerously new. But all that still wasn't enough for her. Not yet. He was trying. He knew he was trying. He felt himself trying more honestly than he had ever tried for anything in his life. But trust wasn't magic for her. Trust for Diana was safety, and safety had been taken from her too many times. So when he finally opened his mouth and told her the truth, the real truth, she didn't fold, she didn't melt, she didn't run into his arms like in a movie. She tested him, and she kept testing him. And that is what almost broke him. And also what finally made him a man. For months, Matteo had lived in two worlds. By day, he sat in his father's offices, trying to understand how a business worked. By night, he drove through the back streets of Naples, watching the lives of people who never had the luxury of being careless. Somewhere between those two worlds, he had started to change. He hadn't touched a drink in weeks. His old friends kept calling, but he ignored them. The noise of his old life no longer fit. What kept him moving now was the memory of Diana. Her voice, her strength, her quiet refusal to be anyone's game. Still, she kept her distance. She was polite, even friendly sometimes, but careful. He could see it in her eyes, the way she measured every word, as if weighing what it might cost her. He couldn't blame her. One evening, he found her sitting by the docks after work, eating a sandwich and watching the lights of the fishing boats. She looked small against the endless water, the same water that had nearly taken her life. He walked over, slow enough not to startle her. "Mind if I sit?" She shrugged. "It's a free dock." He sat beside her. The smell of salt and gasoline filled the air. For a while they didn't speak. Then he said quietly, "I used to come here when I was a kid. My father had a yacht. I thought the sea was just decoration, a place for pictures." She kept her eyes on the dark horizon. "It's not pretty when you're inside it," she said, "when you think it's going to swallow you." Matteo looked down. "I know." Then, softer. "No, I don't, but I want to." She turned her head. "Why?" He took a long breath. "Because I want to understand the life that made you who you are. I want to understand how you still stand up straight when the world keeps pushing you down. I want to understand why I feel like a better person every time you look at me, even when you're angry." Her sandwich stopped halfway to her mouth. He kept going. The words had been locked inside him for months. Now they poured out all at once. "At first, I thought you were a challenge. I thought if I could make you fall, it would prove I still had control. But you didn't. You didn't play the game. You made me look at myself, and I didn't like what I saw. I've spent my whole life taking. You were the first person I wanted to give to." He swallowed, voice low. "Diana, I know I'm the last person you should trust. I know I tried to make you feel small because you made me see how empty I was. But I swear, I'm done with that man. I'm done with all of it. I just want you to know me. Not the Ricci name, not the money, not the reputation, just me." She looked away, blinking fast. "You think words fix everything?" "No," he said. "That's why I started showing you instead." He told her about the scooter he fixed, about the lawyer he quietly paid for to start her residency papers, about how he had been working for months, not to impress his father, but to earn something real. She listened without interrupting, but her eyes were wet. When he finished, the wind picked up, carrying the sound of waves against the rocks. She drew her knees to her chest and whispered, "You don't know what it costs to trust someone." He nodded. "Then let me pay the cost." For a long time they sat in silence. Only the sea spoke between them. Finally, she said, "If you really mean this, you'll still be here when things aren't easy." "I will," he said. "Even if you never love me back, I'll still be here. Because for the first time in my life, it's not about winning." She looked at him. Really looked at him. Searching for a lie. There wasn't one. His eyes were raw and human, stripped of all arrogance. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet, but not cold. "Then stop talking and prove it." Matteo nodded. "I already started." From that night on, he did. He picked up double shifts at the hotel, learning every side of the business, from the kitchens to the front desk. His father thought he was crazy, but he didn't care. Every payslip felt like a brick in the new life he was building. On Mondays, when Diana sent money home, he waited outside the Western Union and walked her to work. Not because she needed protection, she didn't, but because he wanted to share the weight she carried. Sometimes they spoke, sometimes they didn't, but every silence between them grew softer, less guarded. Slowly, her laughter returned. It wasn't loud, but it was real, the kind that started deep in the chest and surprised her as much as him. And when he heard it, he knew. He wasn't chasing her anymore. He was building something with her. He still hadn't earned her love yet, not fully. But he had earned something close to it, her patience, and that was enough to keep him trying. Spring came slowly to Naples. The rain eased, the air turned softer, and the street smelled of sea salt and oranges. Diana began to notice little things again. The warmth on her skin when the morning sun hit the buildings. The sound of laughter from children running through puddles. For the first time since she had left Nigeria, she caught herself thinking about something other than survival. And Matteo was still there. Every morning he parked a modest car outside the pizza shop and waited until she finished her first round of deliveries. He never tried to own her time. He just stayed close enough to help if her scooter coughed or the chain slipped. Sometimes he said almost nothing at all. Other days he talked about work, about how strange it felt to actually earn his own paycheck. "I used to think money only mattered when you had a lot," he said one morning, handing her a coffee. "Now I think it matters more when you earn a little." She smiled. "Welcome to the real world." He grinned back. "It's heavier than it looks." The change in him wasn't loud. It was steady. He began arriving at the hotel before sunrise, wearing the same uniform as the other staff, polishing floors, checking rooms. The older workers whispered that the boss's son had finally gone crazy, but Matteo didn't mind. He was learning the rhythm of effort, the pride that comes from doing something that costs you sweat. Sometimes, when he finished late, he would go find Diana. They would sit on the sea wall, eating leftover pizza and watching the ships. The silence between them had become a language of its own. One night he said quietly, softly, "Do you ever miss home?" She nodded. "Every day. But sometimes I think, maybe home isn't one place. Maybe it's wherever you finally stop running." Matteo looked at her, the reflection of the harbour lights dancing in her eyes. "Then I hope you stop running here." She didn't answer right away. The wind lifted her curls. A strand brushed his cheek. "Don't make promises you can't keep," she said finally. "I'm not promising," he replied. "I'm just telling you what I want." Weeks passed, and the small gestures turned into habits. When she was exhausted, he cooked for her. When his father shouted at him for wasting his status, she reminded him to breathe. She didn't make his world easier. She made it real. One afternoon, his mother, Lucia, confronted him. "You're throwing your future away for a delivery girl." Matteo looked at her and said, "For the first time in my life, it feels like a future." Lucia didn't answer. She just stared, not recognizing the son she had raised. Diana noticed the way people stared when they walked together. Her dark skin beside his pale one, her work jacket beside his tailored shirts. Italy wasn't cruel every day, but the look still cut. One night she stopped in the middle of the street. "Do you ever get tired of them watching?" He took her hand. "They're only watching because they've never seen love built from scratch." That made her laugh, a quiet laugh that trembled but didn't break. The night he finally poured out everything came almost a year after that first pizza. They stood on the same beach where she had arrived years earlier, the moon laying silver light across the water. The waves whispered and pulled, gentle now, no longer angry. He turned to her. "I've been trying to find the right words, but there aren't any good ones." She folded her arms, waiting. He exhaled. "I've hurt people without even knowing it. I used to think life was a game, and I always played to win. Then you showed up, and for the first time, I didn't want to win. I just wanted to deserve you." His voice cracked. "You don't owe me love, Diana. You don't owe me forgiveness. But every day you've made me want to be the kind of man who could protect something good instead of destroying it. I don't know if that's love yet, but it's the truest thing I've ever felt." He stopped, letting the wind carry the silence between them. The waves rolled closer, curling around their shoes. She stared at him for a long moment. "You talk like a man who's ready to love," she said softly. "But loving me isn't easy. It's long hours and bad pay and too many memories that hurt." "I'm not afraid of hard things anymore," he said. "You taught me that." She looked away toward the open sea. "When I came across that water, I promised myself I'd never need anyone again." Matteo stepped closer. "Then don't need me. Just let me walk next to you." Her eyes met his. Slowly, carefully, she reached out and took his hand. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't perfect. It was real. They didn't become a fairy tale couple after that. They still argued about work, about pride, about who paid for dinner. He still had to prove himself to her family back home, and she still had to prove to the world that she belonged anywhere she chose to be. But every struggle felt lighter together. Sometimes he rode behind her on the scooter, arms around her waist, laughing as the wind whipped past. Other times she sat at a hotel table in her worn jacket, while he explained a new project plan with the excitement of a child. They were still building their separate lives, but now those lives bent gently toward each other. Years later, when people asked how they met, Matteo would always start with, "She was just the pizza girl." And Diana would roll her eyes and finish, "And he was the arrogant customer." But whenever she said it, she smiled, because she knew what came after. The girl who had crossed the sea with nothing but hope, the man who had everything and learned to start from zero. Together they found something money couldn't touch: peace. Sometimes love doesn't start pure. Sometimes it starts as a mistake, a game, a wound, and ends as redemption. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe for more real-life love stories like this one. And don't forget, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We love hearing from every corner of the world. Have a beautiful day.